Peter William Sutcliffe died in 2020 from complications of diabetes. He was 74 and he had been serving a whole life sentence because the man was a serial killer who was also known as the Yorkshire Ripper. His father was awful, like so many fathers of serial killers. His mother was abused and humiliated, like so many mothers of serial killers. Sutcliffe would marry at 22 a woman who was domineering and violent at times, diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. They would stay together from 1974 until his arrest in 1981. Sutcliffe was a coward who preyed on vulnerable women, virtually always using a weapon to bash them in the head before continuing his assaults. He was not a criminal mastermind, as you'll see, and he should have been caught long before he was. How many lives might have been saved? How many women who were badly injured spared? Let's dive in and take a look at what he did and how he got away with it for so long. As with nearly all serial killers, we can't be certain of when his criminal behavior first began. We also cannot say with certainty that he was convicted of all of the crimes that he committed, that there aren't more victims. But we'll start with what we know. Sutcliffe first attacked a woman, as far as we can tell, back in 1969. The sex worker had tricked him out of money, and he was out searching for her. He ran into a different woman who was also a sex worker and followed her into a garage. There, he hit her with a sock that had a heavy rock in it. Hard enough that when he bashed her, the rock ripped through the toe of the sock, leaving a hole. Then he went back to his friend, who was waiting for him in a minivan, and told him to drive away. The woman caught the license plate, though, and police showed up to speak to Sutcliffe. It was all recorded, but that was the end of it because the woman didn't want to press charges. Then there was a period between 1969 and 1975 where we don't have any confirmed victims. Seems a long time to have nothing at all from this man, as you'll see. His next recorded assaults came in the space of 7 weeks in 1975. First was Anna Rogalski, 36, who was walking alone. He hit her in the head with a hammer, knocked her unconscious, and then slashed her abdomen with a knife. His attack was interrupted by a neighbor, and Sutcliffe would flee. Anna survived but needed brain surgery and was deeply traumatized by what happened to her. She would say that at times she wished he had taken her life. Sutcliffe's next Mark would also survive. She was Olive Smelt, who was 46, and she was attacked on August 15th in Halifax. He approached with some friendly chatter about the weather before smashing her head with a hammer. He would slash her lower back with a knife, but as before, he was interrupted and he fled. Olive was also deeply traumatized. The first real clue, though, besides the modus operandi of the attack, was that Olive was able to tell police that her attacker had a Yorkshire accent. Keep that in mind because it will be important later. 12 days later, Sutcliffe attacked Tracy Brown in Silsden. She was just 14 and was walking alone along a country lane. They made some small talk, and she didn't fear him. They walked about a mile together, but then Sutcliffe smashed her in the head 5 times. He fled when a car approached. Tracy would also need brain surgery for her injuries. Sutcliffe was never convicted for this assault, but he would confess to it 17 years after the fact. It would be October 1975 that we know of when Sutcliffe committed his first murder. Wilma Mary McCain, just 28 and a mother, was attacked from behind and hit in the head with a hammer. She was last seen in Leeds, walking past the Prince Philip playing fields. After knocking her unconscious, Sutcliffe went knife crazy on the woman, who was defenseless. She suffered at least 15 stab wounds to various parts of her body. Wilma left behind 4 children. Sadly, a secondary victim of this killing was Wilma's eldest child. She took her own life in 2007 after battling depression and anguish over her mother's fate for many, many years. The response to this killing was immense. It was 150 police officers from West Yorkshire Police. They conducted 11,000 interviews, and yet they failed to unearth Sutcliffe as the killer. In 1976, Sutcliffe left another clue for investigators, a boot print. On January 20th, 1976, he picked up Emily Monica Jackson, who was 42, and stabbed her 52 times near some derelict buildings in the Manor Industrial Estates in Leeds. His boot print was left stamped into her thigh. His next known victim, on May 19, 1976, would survive to testify against Sutcliffe at his trial. She is Marcella Claxton, who was 20 when she was attacked by Sutcliffe after accepting a lift from him. She also needed brain surgery, multiple of them, and sadly miscarried her baby as a result of the attack. She had been 4 months pregnant. On February the 5th, 1977, using the same MO, he attacked and killed 28-year-old Irene Richardson. He left tire tracks near the scene. He left a boot print at the next scene on April 23rd when he killed Patricia Atkinson Mitra, who was also known as Tina, 32 years old. He would then kill Jane Michelle McDonald, 16, who was walking home after meeting up with friends, followed by Maureen Long, 43, the following month. Both of these women were killed in the same way as his previous murders. He would leave another important clue at the site of the October 1st, 1977 murder of Jean Bernadette Jordan, who was 20. A brand new 5-pound note he had given to Jean was traceable, and police would find it and trace it to about 8,000 employees who could have received it in their pay packet. They interviewed 5,000 men over the next 3 months, including Sutcliffe. However, he had gone to a family party after killing Jean, and the police would take that as a credible alibi. The next clue came with the next attack. On December 14th, 1977, Sutcliffe attacked Marilyn Moore, who was 25. He lost his balance while trying to bash her head with the hammer that he carried around, and that was enough of a window for Marilyn to make her escape. She had severe head injuries, but she did make it away from Sutcliffe alive. There were tire tracks at that scene, and they matched the tire tracks left at the Irene Richardson scene 10 months earlier. She was also able to give them a description and a complete photo fit composite of the suspect. The photo fit looked a lot like Sutcliffe. She provided a description of his car, and so police would interview Sutcliffe a second time, but no arrest was made. Now at this point, there were enough survivors who could identify Sutcliffe, enough evidence in tire prints, the 5-pound note, the boot prints, to at least arrest and detain for the aggravated assaults, but he wasn't arrested. It would be far from the last time he was interviewed and then let go. In January 1978, Sutcliffe killed 21-year-old Yvonne Ann Pearson. This time, in addition to his normal MO, he stuffed horsehair in her mouth. At the end of the month, he killed Elena Reitka, who is also known as Helen, who was just 19, and then Vera Evelyn Millward followed. She was 40. In April 1979, Sutcliffe killed a 19-year-old clerk named Josephine Ann Whitaker. Unfortunately, after this murder, police became sidetracked. Some fool sent a tape message to police pretending to be the killer, and so police began searching for a man with a Wearside accent, despite the fact that direct witnesses who survived said, no, he's got a Yorkshire accent. The same person sent letters to a newspaper claiming the crimes. As a sidebar, the police looked at the hoax information again in 2005 after DNA became available. DNA from the envelope sent to the Daily Mirror matched John Samuel Humble, a drunk who lived in Sunderland. He was convicted of attempting to pervert the course of justice in 2006 and got 8 years in prison. He died in 2019. Back to the Sutcliffe case. In the meantime, with police sidetracked, Sutcliffe would continue to attack and kill. On September 1st, 1979, he killed Barbara Janine Leach, who people called Babs. She was a 20-year-old student. Sutcliffe was interviewed again as part of the overall investigation, twice in fact. He matched a number of the clues by this time, but police still did not take him as a strong suspect. In January 1980, he killed Marguerite Walls, a 47-year-old civil servant. As he was attacking her in a driveway, he was yelling, "Filthy prostitute." He dragged her into a garden and dumped her there after the attack. Then in September 1980, he attacked Upadhyaya Bandara, a Singaporean doctor who was 34. He was dragging her down the street, with a rope around her neck when he was interrupted and he fled the scene. Just a month later, Maureen Lee, who people called Mo, was a 21-year-old student, and she would survive an attack by Sutcliffe, with significant wounds, but still alive. On November 5th, 1980, he hit Teresa Sykes, just 16, on the back of the head, but her boyfriend heard her screaming and scared Sutcliffe off. She was still recovering in hospital when Sutcliffe was arrested from brain surgery. After this attack, a friend of Sutcliffe's, Trevor Birdsall, would report him to police as a suspect. This is the same person who drove him away from that very first crime scene where he hit the woman with the rock inside a sock. Finally, on January 2nd, 1981, Sutcliffe gets pulled over by a patrolling officer. He had a 24-year-old woman, Olivia Rivers, in his car. He was in a driveway of the Light Trades house in Sheffield. He tells police that he was bursting for a pee and stepped away from his detention momentarily. However, he had false number plates on his car, so as soon as he returned relieving himself, he was arrested and taken to a station in West Yorkshire. There he was questioned for a 9th time about the Yorkshire Ripper cases. By this time, interrogations would have been really old hat for Sutcliffe. Police sergeant, though, returned to that driveway where Sutcliffe had been arrested just on a hunch. He checks around to find out that Sutcliffe had hidden a knife, a hammer, and some rope behind an old storage tank. He wasn't going to pee. He wasn't so much relieving his bladder as he was relieving himself of evidence. Almost unbelievably, when they searched the toilet back at the station, they found Sutcliffe had hidden another knife in the cistern of the toilet. This interrogation was not going to go the same way as all the prior ones for old Petey Boy. Not even close. Police would get a search warrant for his house, and they brought his wife to the station to be questioned. For 2 days, they questioned Sutcliffe, and finally on January 4th, 1981, he would admit that he was in fact the Ripper they were looking for. He would spend all the following day detailing, very calmly, many of his attacks. He shared a common theme with other serial killers who target vulnerable women. He would blame it on them, claiming that he was just cleaning the streets of prostitutes. He would express regret for Jane's murder. He denied one killing, that of Joan Harrison, who police believed was a Ripper victim. However, in 2011, it was proved by DNA that a convicted sex offender, who by that time was dead, Christopher Smith, was actually responsible for that one. Sutcliffe would try to plead guilty to manslaughter for the 13 murders on grounds of diminished responsibility. He would also plead guilty to 7 counts of attempted murder. The judge was not having the diminished responsibility plea, however, and so there would have to be a trial before a jury. He was found guilty of all 13 murders by that jury. He was sentenced to 20 concurrent life sentences, 1 for each murder and 1 for each attempted murder. Evidence from a prison officer who overheard Sutcliffe talking to his wife while in jail would sink any attempts he had at the diminished responsibility plea. He told her that if he could convince people that he was mad, he might only get 10 years in his words, a loony bin. In July 2010, the High Court would alter Sutcliffe's sentence by converting it to a whole life tariff, meaning that he could never apply for parole and he could never be released. After an inquiry into the police investigation, it was found that the senior man who was appointed, Chief Constable Ronald Gregory, ignored advice from survivors, from specialists, from the FBI, and from their own police analysts in favor of the information in the hoax letters and the hoax tape. They were criticized as well for victim blaming, not unusual in these types of cases, unfortunately. The report of the inquiry was not made public until 2006. The report would also reveal that the investigators suspected that Sutcliffe committed several other attacks and murders that reached beyond Manchester and West Yorkshire. It would reveal publicly for the first time that police arrested Sutcliffe in the red light area with a hammer after he was already spoken to about the 1969 assault. That was in September 1969, and was yet another important clue that should have seen Sutcliffe stopped much, much sooner. It's also another important clue that Sutcliffe was likely attacking women since at least 1969, the apparent gap being a complete fiction. It was only after Sutcliffe's death that the West Yorkshire police would issue an apology for the manner in which they spoke of the case and the language they used, which was very often misogynist and sexist. Knowing of these issues, let's look at a few other cases that Sutcliffe is likely responsible for. On October 10, 1977, Carol Wilkinson, 20, was killed using Sutcliffe's MO, but she was ruled out as a Ripper victim because she was not a sex worker. Yeah. They convicted a man, Anthony Steele, narrowly. He professed his innocence and confessed only under really intense questioning after being told he would be allowed to see a lawyer if he confessed. Even the Ripper detectives did not believe the confession was credible. While Sutcliffe never confessed to this murder, any mention of it made him really anxious. He was in the area, knew Wilkinson, and had argued violently with Wilkinson's stepfather over advances he made toward the young woman. Steele's conviction was quashed in 2003, due in part to the discredited confession. After Sutcliffe was captured, West Yorkshire police appointed a detective to lead a secret investigation into whether or not Sutcliffe had additional victims. He would confess to at least 2 of these. These included a 1966 attack and murder on 66-year-old Fred Craven, who was known to Sutcliffe and lived nearby. Sutcliffe had asked Craven's young daughter out several times but was turned down. Sutcliffe's brother Michael was initially held for questioning for the murder. Then there was taxi driver John Tomey, 27. He was hit in the head with a hammer by a passenger near Bingley in March 1967. Tomey actually picked Sutcliffe out of a lineup as his attacker in 1981. In November 1974, Gloria Wood, 28, was hit in the head with a hammer by a man who offered to help her carry bags. She suffered serious injuries but would provide a description that fit Sutcliffe. Deborah Marie Schlesinger was 18 years old, and people called her Debbie. She was stabbed through the heart by an attacker who fled. Witness descriptions would say they saw a dark, bearded man near the scene and her murder was discounted as a Ripper murder because she was not a sex worker. In 2002, however, the West Yorkshire police would say they were ready to charge Sutcliffe. Ultimately, as with his post-conviction confessions, no action was taken. Then there was Ivan Mislevic, 21, who was attacked from behind. The attacker fled when interrupted by a passenger who was at a nearby rail station. Dee provided a description that matched Sutcliffe's. In 2017, West Yorkshire police again reviewed their unsolved crimes to determine whether there were any Sutcliffe was responsible for. The murders of Barbara Young, Wendy Jenkins, Gertie Jensen, and Teresa Thorling were considered but dismissed as Ripper cases, and all 4 of those cases remain unsolved. Other possibilities were included in a 2-part ITV documentary called Yorkshire Ripper, The Secret Murders. They included the unsolved murders of Mary Judge, Lucy Tinslop, Gloria Booth, Judith Roberts, Wendy Sewell, Rosina Hilliard, Alison Morris, and Sally Shepherd, all of which bore semblance to the murders known to be committed by Sutcliffe. He was apparently never even questioned about these murders. The documentary does get one thing incorrect, however. They state that Sutcliffe confessed to all murders that were put before him. He did not. He denied the killing of Joan Harrison, and as mentioned, that case was solved by DNA proving a different man committed that murder. If you're enjoying these videos and want more, don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any videos. Thank you for watching. We really appreciate it.